What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com, and I'm back with my top 5 bets for the week in the world of mixed martial arts. You might be saying to yourself, Sean, there's no UFC this week. There's no PFL this weekend. What are you going to give us bets on? Well, there's some European MMA. There's some betting odds out for them. Like, yeah, well, why not? We got KSW. We got Oktagon. I think there's a CFFC BJJ or something on. I'm like, if I come on here and give BJJ bets, there'll no one ever listen to this show again. So we're going to stick to MMA, and we're going to stick to European MMA this week. And I have 5 bets from the European cards this week. Before we get to that, though, let's talk about last week. And not a bad week at all. We hit 2 of 3 bets because one fight didn't happen. This is Simone Patrizi fight. Unfortunately, he missed weight, and that fight with Chris Bungard didn't happen. We had Diego Ferreira at plus money. He looked all right early. I just don't think Ferreira maybe is what he is. I think maybe age is finally getting him at the age of 40, but credit to Hernandez, a guy I've had bets on before, and we talked about that last week, obviously, but that one didn't hit. But the other 2 did hit in good money prices, plus 116 for David Martinez, a pretty good display against Font, a guy I've watched for a long time, so a lot of effort put into that pick, and we got it right. And then the other pick, Gastelum to win by decision, plus 155, did not at all go the way I expected, so a bit of a lucky pick there, let's be honest. But remember I said last week, Gastelum by decision, or Stuffles by submission. He nearly caught him in a couple of submissions at 14-1. That wasn't a bad bet either, but Gastelum almost got the finish a few times, but Stuffles is very, very tough, but we hit it, and that's all that matters. The one that didn't hit then was the Flier, Lopez by decision at plus 750. Do you know what? Funnily enough, and I hate saying this, but I actually changed my mind, and I actually bet on him to get the knockout, and he did in the end. I think my call last week of Silva feeling the pressure and all of that, I think that turned out to be true in a way. Now in a different way maybe than I said last week, but I think it was definitely an issue for him coming in here. So we didn't hit that, but we got Lopez. We picked Lopez. At least that's something. Right, let's get straight into it here, and let's get to the picks for this week. I'm going to start off over in KSW, and a guy that we've talked about a good few times on this podcast before, and he's a good price coming into this fight this weekend. I'm going for Madars Bertholds-Fleminas, who is plus money at plus 140 for his fight with Tommy Lopachik. I'm going to go with that. Might be very, very, very far off there now, but we'll go with that. But Fleminas, first of all, not on the best run in the world at the moment. He's lost to 2 good guys in a row over in KSW, but he had a great win before that, beating Arthur Spasiak, who was 10-2 after a great one in running Cage Warriors, where he beat so many guys, won so many fights that maybe he wasn't expected to. Like Skibinski, maybe that was a 50-50 fight, but Mantikivi, Jord Holland, Oben Elliott, Mick Stanton, George Hardwick, Matthew Bonner. There's champions and top contenders in Cage Warriors, and he beat all of them guys I just mentioned. He was also in there with against guys like Pedersoli, Figlak, and many more as well. He's fought some really, really good guys. The guys fighting at the weekend, I watched him. He's a good fighter. There's absolutely nothing at all wrong with him as a fighter, but watching a couple of his fights, he seems to me to be a guy who might fall victim of Madars Bertholds-Fleminas. His nickname is the Honey Badger, and that'll tell you the way he fights. He's a go forward type of guy. Loves a finish. I think most of his fights have 10 fights, 13 wins, 10 of them inside the distance. He's a very, very good forward going fighter. Watch one of his fights, and it was a while back because he hasn't lost now in 4 years at this stage. But he fought Peter Wozniak, who is he was 8-5 at the time, but he's gone into a better career now in Babylon, and he did to him. Watch him that fight. It's on YouTube. What Madars Bertholds-Fleminas usually does to guys. Now, again, this was 4 years ago, and maybe everything has changed. And watch a couple of these fights since, and he's definitely improved, and he's definitely a good guy. I just think I'm looking at him and I'm saying, is he the most athletically gifted guy in the world? Is he, is he a world level fighter? Or is he someone that could maybe get caught by, the old guard in the division, like Madars Bertholds-Fleminas is? And make no mistake about that, that's exactly what he is. I think yes. Now, if you go and watch him and you think, right, he is improving an awful lot, and Fleminas is kind of on the way down to 37, which you could argue after two losses in a row, and he's not a bad price. I think he's minus 140 or something. I'll just pull up the odds. That's if that's your way of looking at minus 188. Sorry, but I like Fleminas. I don't know. He's one of those guys that I've bet on a couple of times, but also watched fights he's won and wished I bet on him afterwards. So maybe this is a play on the past as much as a play on the future. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't care. I'm going first up, Madars Bertholds-Fleminas to win over in KSW. I can't wait to get to my flyer, but we've a couple more bits first. I'm going to go with Szymon Bajor to win. Minus 188. Again, not the best price in the world, but I really fancy him in this fight. He's fighting Ricardo Procel. In a fight that I was looking through the records. I was like, all right, I'll go back and I'll watch the first fight. Because I was like, they surely fought before, but amazingly they haven't. But here we go. Bajor has fought the who's who really of heavyweight MMA in the region, if you want to put it that way. Marcin Tybura, Valentin Moldavsky, even Alexander Emelianenko, Ali Thompson, Hani Marks, Phil De Vries, Matthias Scheffel, Victor Pesta, Augustus Agai. The list goes on and on and on. And look, he's won some and he's lost some, but going back watching a couple of those fights today, and especially the one I didn't even mention the name there, Camille Valerus. It was a very, very short fight, and this was a good few years ago. But I watched that fight and I watched the recent fight, and not too dissimilar. Like, he's a guy who can strike, a good, kind of big athlete, but also a guy who has that wrestling. And I think that'll be also important in this fight, because watching Ricardo Procel, very, very well. When I say he has the wrestling and the striking. I think it'll be important in this fight because Procel is a guy who loves a submission. Look at his record here. I believe he's 9 submission wins. Watch back a couple of his fights, like his heel hooks and things like that. He's really, really good at getting them. Daniel Omelechuk fight was the last fight he won. That was back in 2022. Okay, he's fought Phil De Vries since then, so he couldn't have too many complaints about that, and he'd won another fight as well. But he's a guy who takes chances on the ground, and I think Szymon's wrestling is good enough to to make him safe there. And I think he has power on the feet that if Procel stands there, it'll make that wrestling be more important. That's why it's funny. I said the wrestling's important because of the striking, and I think that's the way it is. I think if Bajor can wrestle his way to stay up, he can knock him out. And if he can wrestle his way to stay on top, he can probably knock him out on the ground as well. What fight was it? I was watching back one of the fights, and his opponent took him down. He ended up getting on top, and he just destroyed him from on top. Just absolutely. Actually, it was that fight from a while ago against Valerus. He's been in there, I said, with some very good guys. And the Hani Marks fight, I suppose, is a fight you would look at. Very good jiu-jitsu guy, well able to keep guys, get guys in submissions. That was in PFL. That's up on YouTube as well. Watch back that today. Marks got him. Well, the fight got to the ground, let's put it that way. He was able to get on top. He was able to win the fight in that position and got to a decision and won. I think that's the sort of fight we'll get here against Procel if he doesn't get the finish. And actually, I do fancy the finish. So, but we're going with Szymon Bajor, minus 188, straight up pick. Right, bet number 3 of the week. I'm going for Denis Frimpong, and we're moving over now to Oktagon. Maybe we'll throw in a bit of Irish bias here, but Denis Frimpong is fighting Peter Govel this weekend. Frimpong 6-2, Peter 7-3, but Frimpong's record is one that I think it's obviously it's improved over over the last while. You know, he's won his last 4 fights in a row after losing to George Staines. He also lost his pro debut, but you know, the last one was a very, very good one, Aryan Topal, but the one against Robin Frank really changed my mind on Denis Frimpong. Like, I like Denis as a fighter, obviously, you know, coming out of Ireland as well. Maybe there's a bit of bias there, but the Robin Frank victory, I was not expecting him to win that fight, I'll be honest. I think I even gave Frank as one of my bets, but Denis came through that and looked really, really good. Fought on the big Popek versus Langer card then, and is coming in here with, you know, a great chance. He's fighting a kind of a guy on the way up as well with a similar sort of record, as I said, 7-3, who has won his last 3 in a row as well after losing to Nafuka, who was supposed to fight George Staines, didn't end up happening. And he's a guy as well, you know, good all-around fighter, really. He's a few submissions, a few knockouts, a few decisions. But I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, do I see anything like special about him and seeing something that'll might take him to the next level? Not really. Now again, guys this young in their career, he's only been a pro for 5 years. Like Denis himself, they one big victory and they can go to another level. But I just think Denis' striking looks very good. Denis is grappling, something that's always improving. You know, we saw him, he's the guy who's grappling with Paddy Pimblett, so that's always improving. But I think the striking will be enough to see him through here. He's like, again, he's able to grapple as well. He's no submission yet, but he's a few knockouts, well able to win a decision, well able to go long. And I think, I said the word long there, I think his length will be very, very good for him in this fight. I think he'll keep him at distance, use that jab, and I think he'll win that fight. So Denis Frimpong for bet number 3, a -255. Now I've thrown for my 4th bet a couple of big favourites in there together for a double, and I'm going with Hafeni, Nafuka, who I just mentioned, and James Hendin. It's around the same price as Frimpong Frimpong is -250, around -275 again. We have we're kind of caught for bets this weekend. There isn't a whole lot. I was looking at the Vichel Tunkara fight as well, just to I suppose quickly mention that. And I don't know, the price kind of put me off on that one. So we'll stick to this one for the time being. I like both of those guys in both of those fights over in Oktagon. First of all, Hafeni Nafuka, he's fighting a guy, Kevin Inns, who's 4-3. And to be honest, I think this is a little bit of back to winning ways sort of fight, without being too disrespectful to Kevin. He won his last fight, in fairness, him at Oktagon, 68. He lost 2 fights before that. Thought the guy's but not the best record in the world. He lost to Dom Narcus as well, who I know is a very, very good fighter. But I don't think he's the biggest knockout power in the world. Not amazing on the ground. I think Nafuka will end up taking him down. Obviously, he's coming off of a couple of really tough losses. Like, he lost to George Staines and even Bushinger and Pedro Bogdanovic, the only 3 guys he's ever lost to. One of the best prospects in the world, one of the best old stagers in the world, and maybe the second best fighter in Octagon, maybe the third best fighter in Octagon. He beat Aryan Topal before that. He beat Peter Gowell, who we just talked about a minute ago as well, and Adrian Kepa. Very good fighter. I think his wrestling will be a key here, but I think he can win this fight anywhere. And then James Hendin on the other side of it, he's fighting Anton the Pipe, who's 13-5. I've seen him fighting a couple of times actually. He fought over in Cage Warriors against Tanio Palaricio and Corey Tate as well. Went 1-1 over there in that run. He fought Josh Reed and lost to that. He actually fought Lerone Murphy as well and Jack Shore back in the day. So he's fought some very, very, very good guys in his career. He's a guy who has a lot of decisions on his record. I think of his 18 fights, 10 of them have gone to a decision. Hendon on the other side of it, then, a lot of finishes in his record. 6 of his 9 fights have finished inside the distance, and he's been in there with some really good guys. Like, the only guy he's lost to in the last 3 years is Mohamed Makachev, who was fighting a couple of weeks ago, who's really, really good. Not Mohamed Mahayev, no, but Makachev. The only other 2 guys he's lost to are Jordan Vucinic and Paul Hughes. So there you go. He beat Tobias Orilla a few years ago famously with that broken arm, but he's also beaten Kingsley Crawford, Josh and Wardy, Jordan Barton. This guy is one of the top guys. He may be falling off a small bit, but I really fancy him in this fight. I like him to get it done. He's out of a good part of the world, out of the fish tank gym, TFT, and I like him to get it done in this. And in the flyer of the week, bet number 5, I'm going for Fabio Moraes at plus 550. Will Florian like me for this one, but he's fighting in the main event in Oktagon. He's fighting Frederick Vosgroni, and I'll be honest, I don't think Frederick Vosgroni is that good. He's one of these guys. He's 4-0, and he jumps across the cage and he pulls you down, and he seems like a really scary wrestler, but is he a really scary wrestler? I think that remains to be seen. I watched a bit of Fabio Moraes, and this guy has hands, and he can throw them. And I think if he keeps this fight on the feet against Frederick and throws his paws, he has 6 wins via knockout. 6 wins via knockout. This guy can win, and I think this guy will win at plus 550. So there you go. There's your flyer of the week. Just to recap, we have Fleminas at plus 140, Bajor at minus 188, Frimpong at minus 250, a double of Nafuka and Hendin at around minus 275, and for the flyer of the week, which isn't really a flyer, Fabio Moraes plus 550. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Please bet responsibly. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.